All right, here we are. We are live. Happy Thursday. Welcome to a Lunch and Learn with Purse Strings. My name is Maggie, and I'm happy to have you here today. Purse Strings, if you're new here, is all about providing tips, tricks, financial know-how. And then when you're ready to go, if you're getting divorced, if you need a will, planning for retirement, having kids, whatever financial situation you find yourself in, we have top tier financial professionals willing, ready, and able to serve you. Lingo is one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, and she's on here today talking about the great divorce with us, since we're talking about divorce all month. But before we dive into all that fun, Linda, could you give us a little intro of who you are and what you do?
Well, who am I? I am a badass financial coach,
Yep.
and I am money mama mentor to the younger generation. And I love women hire me to so that they get a handle on their finances, so they actually learn financial mastery, so they build their wealth, and then so they can make an impact in the world. So I love what I've done. I've done it all my life. I've been in finances. I'm a CPA. I have an MBA in finance. And besides that, I am a Grammy to 3 wonderful grandchildren, and I love to travel. Actually, I just got back this morning at 2 a.m. from Maui. So here I am back in Oregon, where it's cold.
Yeah, we never know where Linda's going to be. She's always traveling. But I love the mommy money mentor. Love that too. So we're excited to have you on today. We're glad you made it. And yeah, we want to dive into the great divorce. And when you prompted this, you said it's just a different type of divorce. It's more complex.
Mm.
Can you kind of start with some of those reasons why, it's unique?
Right. So the gray divorce is defined as anyone 50 and older. We tend to have gray hair, or start to have gray hair if we let it go. And it is a little bit different because typically women going through a gray divorce are in retirement or near retiring. And they typically have grown children, grandchildren. It's usually a more complicated divorce because they've been married longer, so you tend to have accumulated more assets. And one of the most critical aspects of a gray divorce is the retirement. The retirement accounts, funds, pensions, annuities, all of that goes into it. And you've probably owned your house longer, so you have more equity in the house. And so that is a big deal too when it comes to a gray divorce. So all of those things contribute to it being a bit more complicated. Plus the fact that in the gray divorce, typically you've been married for anywhere from 15 to 40 years. I was married 40 years and went through a gray divorce. And so I have firsthand knowledge and experience on all of this.
Yeah, but then your lives are very much intertwined. And so it's very hard to kind of separate that and, kind of recreate that vision of two lives and supporting two different retirements and lifestyles like that when it was really intertwined as one.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And so how do you kind of start looking at that retirement income when you're going through, a gray divorce? Since that's really top of mind after a while, since, you don't have the kids and things now to take care of.
Right. So actually, what I just mentioned, that was a lot of what I call the intelligent quotient, or the IQ part of the divorce. On the other side is what I call the emotional quotient, or the EQ part of the divorce. And that is, like you said, women have typically been married for a longer period of time. They've had kids. And for a lot of them, it's the first time where their identity is not with their spouse. Mm-hmm. Now they're on their own. And I have so many women say to me, I don't know who I am. I've been a mom, a wife for so long. I really don't know who I am. And that's a big part of it as well, is figuring out what they want their life to look like and dreaming about it. And that's actually something I help my clients go through, is exercises to help them identify the life they want to live. I mean, my life 6 years ago compared to what I'm living right now is drastically different, because it's the life I envisioned. It's how I wanted to live my life. Yeah. And so, of course, going along with that is the money aspect. And so the retirement is a big part of it. And I think too many times, I don't want to say all the time, but too many times I've seen where women just want to get through it. Just let's just
Yeah.
get through divorce. I don't like confrontation. I just had a client. I talked about this last weekend. I don't like confrontation. I just want to get through it. It's okay if he has this and that. And I finally put numbers to what she was talking about. And I said, do you realize you're giving up $1 million? Do you really want, can you afford to give up $1
Yeah.
million? And she's like, no, I didn't really look at it that way. And so it is working with them to put pen to paper and really figure out, in California, which is where my divorce occurred, it's a 50-50 state. But that doesn't mean necessarily 50-50. There's a lot of aspects, a lot of retirement accounts at our age going through a gray divorce are 401s, pre-tax, because Roth IRAs weren't a thing until the early 2000s. So you really have to look at the tax aspect as well as, like I said, equity in the home. Those are probably two of the biggest assets that need very, very careful consideration. And you have to look at the tax aspect of each one of those buckets of money, if you will.
I really like how you sat down with her and kind of, instead of, yes, we want to get through the divorce as fast as we can. It's not the most enjoyable process, but sometimes you really do have to, pick and choose your battles. And this might be one of them for your financial future, because how much time are you willing to put in to, to have that $1 million? You're either going to have to work to make that, or, so it is definitely figuring all of that out.
Definitely. There was actually a study by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, and it said that women's household income falls by 41% following a divorce or separation after age 50, so our great divorce, while men's household income only dropped by 23%. And women live an estimated 5 years longer than men. So not only are we dealing with, right, the here and now, but we also have to think about our future. And along with that is, if we're living 5 years longer, hopefully we're healthy, but long-term care is another aspect, because, we're on our own. Yes, we may have children or grandchildren, but we really don't want to saddle them with, our health care in our later years. So long-term care is also an aspect to be considered. So I found those statistics to be not totally surprising, but 41% versus 23%. I mean,
It's
double.
huge.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
huge.
definitely something to consider, to be aware of.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, those can be expensive years, those extra 5 at the end, with caretaking or whatever it may be. You just never know.
Yep. And the other thing to think about is women of our generation, my generation, not yours, obviously. Many, I won't say all, were stay-at-home moms.
Yeah.
So, they were, the June Cleavers of our day. And so they probably don't have a retirement account to fall back on. And so it is very important. Actually, when I was going through my divorce, one of the best things I did was I hired a specialist who understood the pension and could advise me on the best way, and fair, but the best way for me to get 50% of that pension. And so, and it was not what was proposed either. I had to propose it. So you really you have to be your own advocate. And so, whether it's mediation or whether it's going through the legal system. Unfortunately, my ex was an attorney, so we spent a lot of time in court. But but anyway, it's really important to understand, and then along with the retirement, that's all pre-tax. So it's like, oh, I'll give him, I don't know, 50% of the house, and I'll take 50% of his retirement. Well, that, after tax dollars, that's not the same thing.
Yeah. It's so interesting diving in what the dollars are never equal, from the pensions, from, the Roth and then the regular or the regular IRA, no dollars really equal. And so it takes some understanding, to make sure you do get that equal divorce or that fair divorce. especially for ththose stay-at-home moms.
Absolutely. And the other thing to think about is, sometimes this is the first time the woman has been in charge of her finances.
Yeah.
And so not only is she going through an emotional separation, the divorce, but she's having to focus on finances, and this can bring up a lot of fear in women. I'm not good at my money. I don't know how to do it. I've never invested before. He's always taking care of that. They abdicate. And it's like, now you have to take control. Now is the time when you have to understand what your finances are. And so, many times it's going back to the basics of, having them develop a budget. What do you need to live on?
Mm-hmm.
Your needs, and then what do you want your life to look like? What do you want? And so having them actually spell that out, and sometimes that takes a while because, like I said, they have to rethink,
Mm-hmm.
how they're going to live, where they're going to live. Maybe they're going to move and be closer to the kids or grandkids or family members, or whatever but then that brings up, if they're moving, what do they do with the home? Because,
Yeah.
when they're entering their 50s and 60s, especially when they're getting ready for retire, many people have their home paid off.
Yeah.
So it's, do I keep the home? Do we sell the home? Because if she keeps the home, that means she has to give half of the equity to the ex. Well, how is she going to come up with that money? She's probably going to take out a home equity loan. So now she's in debt again. There's a lot of considerations to go in. And I actually read another study. I don't have it, the source right here, but this particular study said one of the biggest mistakes women make is the emotional attachment they have to their home, and thinking
Yeah.
they have to stay in the home,
Yeah.
which is often the biggest mistake, because they'll probably go into debt or forfeit part of the retirement fund
Yeah.
for the home, and not take into consideration the upkeep, the expenses, and do they really need that big home? And the emotional part of it, do they want all that negative
Yeah.
energy?
Oh,
Oh my God, I was so glad when I sold that house. It was like, I'm out of here. I can't stand this negative energy. This is not good. I don't think women think about that, because when you're going through a divorce, for most people, it's a traumatic event.
yeah.
And the longer you've been married, the harder it is to separate, because you've got your future all planned out. You thought
Yeah.
you had it all figured out. At least that's how I was. And so it took a while. And yes, and so you're tied up in all this emotional and trauma, and then going through the divorce. If you can mediate, that's great. I highly recommend it. If you can't, hire the best attorney you can. And here's a little tip: if you interview an attorney, your ex cannot hire that attorney.
Really?
Mm-hmm. At least that's the way it is in California. So I talked to all my friends. I interviewed the 5 top divorce attorneys in my area, because I knew I was only going to hire one, but because I didn't want him hiring them. So
I love that.
mhm.
I love that.
Yep.
Yeah, you could tell it's very complex. The home is something that we have been talking about this month, and having a certified divorce lending professional on your team to help you either refinance that or just sell it and move on. But houses are expensive. I know when I was with my mom and she was getting divorced, neither of us wanted to shovel the Chicago winters and keep up with the lawns all summer and do the gutters. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know how to do that. It cost us in ladders and different things that we don't, let's just hire out. But it
Mm-hmm.
does add up from having another person help you support and live in that house.
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many different moving parts.
Definitely. And I would say, and I think this is true for all divorces, not just for gray divorces, I think surrounding yourself with a team of professionals that
Mhm.
you trust is key. And I'm talking everything from, financial coach to a good either a mediator or a divorce attorney, to a good counselor or therapist. You need to surround yourself with people who are there to support you, because it is a very emotional time. And other things to consider, and I think, like I said, I think this is true of everyone, but I think sometimes it's more of a challenge for women in their 50s plus because they haven't always done this themselves. And that's one of the first things you should do is run a credit report to see I mean, you've been married for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, you should have seen my credit report. Holy criminy. But you don't, I mean, I think we're more aware of it now, maybe because of all the cybersecurity, but take a look at all the open credit cards you have in joint names, because I'm not an attorney, but I do know this from my own experience. When it's in the joint name, either one can charge on it. And because it's joint, if he refuses to pay, you're stuck with it. So go through and understand what credit cards are in the joint names, and make sure you open a credit card if you don't already have one in your own name. You have to have at least one in your own name. So open that first, and then start looking at what's in your joint names. If you're the primary on it, you can write and do this in writing. I learned the hard way. You cannot make a phone call because they don't consider that I can't remember what they said, but anyway, that's not considered official notice.
Oh,
but if you're the primary on a credit card, you write and have your soon-to-be ex taken off so that it's in your name only. If he's the primary, either he has to do that, which he probably won't, or you can call and close the account because, again, it's a joint. And, I mean, it depends on how harmonious the divorce is, but I have had some clients who've had to do that. Call and, first of all, you have your own credit cards and your own names. But I mean, if you're afraid of him racking up thousands, I mean, my ex did tens of thousands. And, this is not a pretty sight to all of a sudden get a bill and you got, 15, 20,000 sitting on a credit card bill you knew nothing about, and you thought you had closed, but it wasn't. So all that to say, these are tips to make sure that you are taking care of yourself financially. So make sure you run your credit report, you understand any and all loans and credit cards that are open and active, and then make sure you've got credit cards in your own name. And the same thing goes with your bank accounts. Yeah. You need to open a bank account in your own name, and you need to get, if you're taking Social Security, you have to get your Social Security changed over to that checking account that's in your name alone, because anything in a joint account, he can take out completely. Yeah. It's not like, oh, it's only 50% is his. No. And same thing on any investment accounts. If you have a brokerage account, it's in your joint names. He can take it all out. So you need to advise your financial advisor that you are going through a divorce, and he or she needs to know that, so that if they get a call, they're aware of the situation. Because, I mean, I've had clients who were literally wiped out because they weren't aware. So your investment accounts are really important too.
That's definitely a story I hear more often than I would like, but it is kind of a cleanup almost afterwards to make sure everything is, all doors are locked, all keys are thrown away, to make sure that, no money can be moved around without your knowledge. And it's claiming back your power, I think, sometimes as well. And just doing a good cleanup, knowing you're good to go for the next chapter of your life. But
it's more than a cleanup, Maggie. I want to make it a pre. I want to make sure these things are done before, so they're not caught off guard. So,
and that's a great point. Yeah. Because anything can happen. So you got to get to it ASAP.
Yep. And the other thing to remember is, depending on how the divorce is going, if you're moving out or he is, but make sure that you have copies of things like your retirement statements, your pension statement, Social Security statements. Make sure you have your last bank account. So you might think, oh, well, I can get in. Well, if it's a joint account, he can change the password at any time. Right. So that's the other thing. Know what the passwords are. And if it's your account, change them, because you don't want him accessing your accounts. Yeah. So it's being prepared. It's having a copy of your deed of trust. It's having a copy of any documents. Your tax returns are really important for the last couple of years, because that'll prove the lifestyle that you've been used to. And if you're going for alimony or any kind of support, you have to show what kind of lifestyle you're used to, and your tax returns will definitely help you in that. So I say have the last 3 years of your tax returns, have an inventory of
Mhm.
all of your personal effects. I mean, go around and video your entire house and show because things disappear. All of a
Mhm.
sudden, the guns aren't in the gun case, or the motorcycle's not there in the garage, or the story goes on and on. But I've been
Yeah.
through all of that. So if you have titles, if you have deeds of trust, and if you have any inventory pictures, appraisals, anything like that, because you do have to have a statement of your assets and your liabilities. So same thing, you need to have your last statement of, like, if you have a car loan, well, what is the balance owing on that? Or if you still have your mortgage, what is the balance owing on that? So having a schedule of all of your assets and all of your debts. And I always tell my clients, this is probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but the more prepared you are,
Yeah.
the I won't say it's easier, but it will go smoother
Yeah.
having the information at your fingertips. So
And I really like how you mentioned about, some of your assets is, either those guns or artwork and things like that, because I think sometimes we forget about, we don't forget about our boats and cars and homes, but we might forget these things that are in our house that are still worth a lot of money. Whether I don't, some people have collectibles or heirlooms or whatever those may be, but if those things carry a lot of worth, that's really important to remember. And again, could be a small detail that you miss over, that can lead to a lot of money.
yeah, I mean, it could be things like the baby pictures, or the
Yeah,
video of the kids when they were young, and those might not have monetary value, but they have a
right.
lot of emotional attachment. So just,
Definitely.
yeah. And so, women say, really, can you prepare for a divorce? I said, absolutely. I absolutely. You prepare emotionally and intelligently with, your finances as well. So yeah. And then, once you move out, or if he's moving out, this is the time to be thrifty, because it may be the first time you've ever been on your own, so it
Yeah.
is having that budget. It's understanding where your money goes, because, let's face it, if we've been married for 40 years and we've been used to living a certain lifestyle, we may not, keep track of those monthly subscriptions that just get charged to the credit card, or, eating out as much as we're used to, whatever it might be. Now is the time to really take inventory of that. And, even as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, good grief, this sounds kind of overwhelming. But if you take it in little bite-sized pieces
Hmm.
and work with a professional, it is easier. It's never easy, but we can hold your hand and help you walk through the steps. But
Right.
um, so it's understanding what you need
Hmm.
to just for the next 6 months to a year, because I recommend that clients, we always say have an emergency savings account. I call it a solution savings account, and having 6 months in a high yield savings account that you can use for living expenses and attorney expenses, if it comes to that, will save you peace of mind.
Yeah.
You won't, you won't be numb with fear. You won't worry about if you can pay, the gas or electric, or get groceries. At least it'll take a little bit of that fear off your plate, if you will.
Right. Definitely. I mean, once you know that you have that roof over your head and you can stay warm, that really does help in that process.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. You've been a wealth of knowledge, Linda. You have so much great information, but to go back to your point, it does sound overwhelming, and it definitely could be, especially just with the emotions that you have going on. And that's why a team is really important. And like you said, that's your financial advisor, financial coach, your attorney or mediator, but also a therapist of some sort. And your girlfriends, and you want to be able to communicate with everybody and share what you need to do. And everyone's really there to support you. But having that team around you, especially for the finances, is essential to make sure you start living the best future life in that next chapter.
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of a two-edged sword in some ways. I've had so many clients and they're like, oh, my girlfriend said I should do this, or my sister said I should do this. And they're all very well-intentioned.
Yeah.
And they only want what's best for you. And when you're going through a divorce, it's a very traumatic experience. And they cannot make the decisions for you. But at the same time, you really do need to surround yourself with those team of professionals that you trust.
Yeah.
Because that is where the non-emotional decisions can be made. Not that we don't respect your emotions. Of course we do. I've been there. I've done that. But it's where we can logically think through some issues that the person going through a divorce just hasn't thought of because they haven't been there before.
Right. So. Right. Yeah. You got to leave it to a professional. They're the ones who kind of are trained in this area and really know these nuances to keep track of, for sure. But that has been a ton of great information, Linda. You can tell you're an expert in this field. And so, what's the best time for someone to reach out to someone like you in this process? Is this even before they mention the D word? I know people can contact anytime throughout, but what would be maybe the ideal situation?
I would say if they're contemplating a divorce, let's talk right away, because like I said, we can set you up for as successful a divorce as possible. We can get everything in line. And it's almost easier to make some of these financial decisions ahead of time because you're not quite caught up in the emotional aspect of the divorce just yet. So I say, as soon as you contemplate, let's sit down, let's take a look. Yeah. And not only that, it's not just numbers. I'm a holistic coach. So I do a lot of mindfulness and, I'm not a therapist, but been there, done that. And, and it was helpful. It got me through it. Let me tell you. But let's sit down and talk about it and talk about, mediation, which, if you can do that, I'm a big advocate of it.
Right.
But, and so you can get a realistic picture, because I think sometimes women get so caught up in, I have a horrible life. I have a horrible marriage, and I'm not putting that down at all. I came from one. I totally get it. But it's understanding what is your life going to look like afterwards. Yeah. And I will tell you, it was the hardest thing I ever did when I had to write that 6-figure check to him as half of my retirement. He got half of it. But I got to tell you, the best thing I did was write that 6-figure check, because it meant freedom. Yeah. I was free, and I have never looked back, and I have lived my life insanely different. And I'm loving every minute. So so divorce is meant for some people, but not for everyone. So the earlier, the better, to answer your question.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, every time I see you, you're glowing and traveling. So I think you're living your best life, which we love to see. And so we have your email going through the bottom here, lindalingo.com. I know you can be found on social media at Money Mama Mentor. And then there was a free download that you wanted to share as well, right?
Yeah. So if you go to lindalingo.com, I have a resources tab. Click on that. I have several free resources, but one in particular is called How to Go from Surviving to Thriving Your Great Divorce. Like I said, some of these tips are the same for every divorce. So whether you're 50 and older or not, go ahead and click on it, and you can get that in your email. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Linda, for coming on today and sharing your expertise. And if anyone needs any help, just reach out to Linda or any of our Purse Strings approved professionals. They're happy to help you through this time. So we'll see everyone again here next week, and have a great rest of your week. All right. Bye.
Thank you.